more on the impact of the US and EU's latest round of sanctions on Russia, we're joined by Charles Ortel, Managing Director of Newport Partners. Charles, good to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Michelle.
Charles, some analysts say that the current sanctions have indeed had an impact, that the economy is pretty much flat, that the ruble is very low against the dollar, and that foreign direct investment has taken a big hit and that money is flowing out of Russia. Do you think that they've had any impact?
I think the sanctions undoubtedly had some impact, but the overwhelming impact on the Russian economy has been the decline in energy prices, which has hurt all major energy producers around the world, especially Russia. That's their biggest business.
So is it a good idea to up the ante, to ratchet up more sanctions?
I absolutely do not think so. I do not understand U.S. foreign policy, European foreign policy here. I fail to see what our objectives are here vis-a-vis punishing Russia in the Ukraine. I understand we need to stand up and call out the Russians for seizing Ukraine. But beyond that, I'm not sure how this helps, how this preserves the European alliance. I think it exposes the alliance to some dangerous division.
Well, in the meantime, the EU and the US are together and have coherently come up with a sanction strategy. They're upping the ante. They've now included limiting the access to the US and EU equity and debt markets for Russia's largest bank by assets, that's Sberbank, and for Rostec, that's the conglomerate that, amongst other things, makes Kalashnikov rifles. Do you think that this will have much bite?
I absolutely do not, because unfortunately for us in the West...
They won't be able to access debt and equity markets, though.
Well, you see, Russia's net debt position is not that high. They have substantial excess foreign reserves. They also have the ability to punish the people who need to buy the gas from Russia with higher prices and change credit terms.
All right, so what about the sanctions on Gazprom? Will they have some impact?
I think they'll have some impact, but again, they're going to push Russia to the east, to China, India, and to other places who want to suck up all the energy that Russia could produce out there.
So is it really the same case that we've seen with the ban on EU and US and Australian and Norway and Canadian food imports, that Russia just simply goes to another source to fill the void?
I think that's true. The problem with this is that Russia is sort of one force fighting against many, many different nations, each of whom is in varying positions. Germany's relatively strong, but a lot of these European nations are really weak.
But my question, Charles, is that as long as other countries, be it emerging markets, be it Asian countries, be it China, being it a big conglomerate of South American countries, are willing to step in and fill the void that's left by US and EU sanctions, Russia can still very much function in the global economy.
Not only can it function, and I hope this isn't the case, if Russia exposes the West as being a paper tiger in the midst of all these global conflicts out there, Russia's international standing rises and ours falls at a very dangerous moment.
Well, Russia has also taken retaliatory action, as we just discussed, the sanctions that it had against food imports and other US companies. What are we going to do this?
Well, one thing that would hurt would be if Russia curtailed the ability of American and European nations to overfly Russia into Asia. That would hurt. That would lengthen travel a lot.
They would ban them flying over Russian airspace?
That's what happened prior to 1991. It took a lot longer to go from Europe and the United States that way.
Do you see that as Putin's next move?
It may be one of them. I also think another thing Putin could do would be to, I think he took umbrage at President Obama's characterization of Russia as merely a regional power. So he might insert himself more into South America, into Nicaragua, Argentina, Venezuela, maybe Cuba. I don't think he sees his hand as being weak.
Charles, you're painting a picture of the Soviet Union coming back.
Well, he's done something really interesting. He's sort of divested himself of many of the countries that have problems in the former Soviet Union with more radical, large Muslim populations, and he's now back to a smaller core.
But the sanctions are going to hit close to home, especially with his inner circle. They now include travel bans and asset freezes on a lot of Putin's entourage and friends and fellow politicians. You don't think that they may influence him to back off?
Well, you never know about numbers coming out of Russia, and you don't really know about surveys. But the opinion surveys coming out of Russia have Putin way up in popularity and our own president way down in popularity. So, I don't think that I don't think he's going to be cowed by these moves yet.
So how long can this game of chicken, if you will, continue?
I think it's going to continue well into next year, and overlaying it will be what's the drama going on in the Middle East, where we're trying to put together a coalition that Putin doesn't necessarily endorse.
So what do you see happening?
I think there's a very grave risk that this could spin out of control. Because here, two major league powers within the G8 are basically at loggerheads. And then meanwhile, we have all the other threats that we have to deal with.
There are certainly a number of threats, especially in the Middle East, with IS and Syria and Iran, that the U.S. needs to have its coalition together for. But in the interim, what should the U.S. be doing? Should it just ostensibly let Russia take over the Ukraine?
Well, I think there's some history here that the U.S. and the Western media is not really getting into. We entered into an agreement in Budapest many years ago where we said we wouldn't expand eastward. Now we're pushing rapidly eastward. And, one would hope that people from both sides would get together.
But we're not pushing eastward. The U.S. is not pushing eastward.
Europe is pushing eastward, most certainly, into territory that used to be in the sphere of the former Soviet Union in violation of the Budapest Agreement. So you'd like to see people from both sides go somewhere calm, think this through, and bring us back from a place we don't need to be.
Well, we're in that place now, and the ante has been upped. All right, thank you for your insights, as always. Charles Ortel, Managing Director of Newport Partners.